Going to talk about an overview of the film business. So some of the subjects, and welcome, will be the key characteristics of the industry, the structure of the industry, and we'll talk about the new media players and their impact on the studios. So of the key characteristics, one of the first ones is that films are intellectual property. It's a type of creative product, right? Intellectual property. And we'll talk about managing creative talent. We'll talk about how movies are very much a global product now, and that film takes a long time to develop, produce, and market. We'll look at the market structure, the oligopoly versus monopoly, and we'll talk about the cyclical nature of the industry and price elasticities. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Thanks, sorry about that. So, film is intellectual property. Film is intellectual property, right? Something you've thought of and ideated and invented, and it's protected by copyright laws, just like music, books, dances, choreography. Those are all protected by copyright laws. And the value of intellectual property and copyright is in the right to exploit it, right? So if I make a movie, the file sitting on my computer has no value in and of itself. It's the right to sell it to people in different forms. So when you look at film companies like Disney, for instance, one of their big assets that makes the company so valuable is the complete value of all the movies that they have, not just their recent ones, but going all the way back to Snow White and Dumbo. And those film libraries, the studios all have thousands of titles, and they have enormous value because they can keep selling them over time. So, successful exploitation of a movie requires an understanding of film markets all around the world, which are always changing, with economic times. And intellectual property, which movies are, they contain elements that can further be exploited, right? So, movies have characters and props and sets inside them, and those can also be turned into intellectual property of their own. One of the important things about movies is the management of creative talent. And every film is unique in that it's a very collaborative type of product, and it draws on the talents of many people: hair and makeup artists, actors, writers, directors, and the business relies on the efforts of all these creative artists. The complex nature of filmmaking relies on the successful collaboration of these artists and, of course, a large financial investment. The ability to manage that creative talent is essential to success in the film business. Actors, directors, and writers exhibit many idiosyncrasies of artists and are protected by representation of some type, be it managers, agents, and entertainment lawyers. And understanding the dynamics of these relationships is one of the keys for business success in the industry. Everyone knows now that film is a global product, and if you look at the Avengers Endgame, the money that they made just in China alone was kind of staggering, and movies truly now have to appeal to international audiences, and they've become one of the leading export industries in the United States. More than half of the money that comes in to a movie comes from outside of America. And while the industry is centered in Hollywood and Los Angeles, where the sound stages are, the corporate headquarters are typically in New York. But films are now, developed, financed, produced, and distributed truly on a worldwide basis. So the ability to understand and work across borders with, different economic and cultural structures and taste is key to success for filmmakers, managers, or entrepreneurs who want to work in the movie business. Among the creative arts, film is one that takes a long time to make because of decision making, because of the collaboration required just to finalize a script and cast it and find the money and complete a film, it can take years from the time a story idea is acquired or a script is written until the film is actually in theaters. And changing consumer taste can turn what seems like a great idea when you first come up with it in development into something that's, kind of tired and stale by the time the movie makes it into the theaters. So the market structure, um, it is now an oligopoly, and it once was a monopoly. So a monopoly, as you know, is when one company controls an industry, right? Like, who do you pay your electric bill? That's a monopoly. And for decades following the invention of the film projector, the film industry in the U.S. was a monopoly controlled by the Edison Trust, established by Thomas Edison, who created that technology. It is now an oligopoly, which is an oligopoly is when an industry is controlled by a handful of companies that generate the majority of the revenue. And this has been the state of the film business for the past century. So the studios compete with each other, but they also have to sometimes work together to control pricing and laws and lobby the government for policies that help them, and also to cooperate on technical standards, right? Like when we started seeing 3D films just a few years ago that really took off, that was in part because all the studios had to work together for those standards. So two terms rather in business is cyclical, right? Things are cyclical. They have patterns that rise and fall. And price elasticity. These are concepts that apply to many industries, not just the film business. So movie consumption is seasonally cyclical. Patterns of consumption rise and fall over the calendar year. And you know this, right? Movie attendance goes up in the summers. It goes up at the end of the year. And price elasticity is how sensitive consumer demand relates to movie prices, and this has to do with supply and demand. So a question we might ask is, how much can ticket prices be changed before consumers begin to reduce their consumption of films? So price discrimination, which is a slightly different idea, occurs when ticket prices vary based on different factors, right? Buyer's age, time of the screening, or format. So if you go to see the Avengers Endgame, for a matinee, you'll pay less than maybe if you went at night or if you went to an IMAX screen. That's price discrimination. You're selling the same product at different price points. And distributors are experimenting to find, the optimum price point. Movie tickets are price elastic in that continuing increases in prices have not noticeably reduced consumption. So even though prices have gone up, demand has stayed constant. That's not to say that movie theaters are doing all that great. Everybody knows, Netflix and Amazon and the streaming services are not helping the theaters out, certainly at all. So if we look at the structure of the film industry in the functional sectors, those are production, making the movie, distribution, that's licensing the movie and getting it out into the marketplace, and then the exhibition, which is when people consume a film. Film production and distribution are dominated by a group of large companies, right? The studios or the majors, releasing between 100 to 140 films a year, and these companies together generate approximately 84% of revenue annually. Each studio is owned by a public company which creates and sells vast amounts of media, not just movies, right? Broadcasting, gaming, publishing, music, television. So those companies are Warner Brothers Entertainment is owned by Time Warner, which was just bought by AT&T. That's a public company. Universal Pictures is owned by Comcast. Paramount is owned by Viacom. Walt Disney Pictures, the movie part of it, is owned by Disney, the Disney Corporation. Disney just bought Fox, so I have to update this slide. And Sony Pictures, the movie division, is owned by Sony, the company Sony, which is, a big electronics giant. The structure of the industry because the studios participate in every sector, right? Production, distribution, and exhibition, they're considered vertically integrated, which increases power and control all the way to the consumer. I've got a graphic to show you in a minute. And to further increase their power and also block competition, studios are also horizontally integrated, which means they acquire additional businesses at the same value level of the value chain, right? Both of these strategies help the companies grow, and they prevent rivals from purchasing potentially profitable companies. And they offers a means to separate and maintain distinct brands. So if you look at a company like Disney buying Pixar, well, they wanted their movies that Pixar had already made. Okay, they wanted to have new product. They wanted to have the brand Pixar, and they also didn't want anybody else to buy Pixar, right? That's another important piece of this. So let's go back to vertical integration, because mostly vertical integration is about control. So one company that is vertically integrated means they can produce films. Disney, makes a movie, then they distribute it, they put it out into the marketplace, and they exhibit it, right? We can go to the Disney streaming platform and, purchase their movies there. Here's an example, really, of horizontal integration and vertical integration. So vertical integration is really on the left there, production, distribution, and exhibition. And you'll see how horizontally integrated, right? So at the distribution level, if you're a company like Disney, you can distribute with different arms into theatrical and internet and TV and other ancillary markets in the foreign markets, and then in exhibition, also the same. So just to talk about the different sectors of the industry, so the structure of it really divides it by what happens to the film at each point. So the production sector is about making a movie. Distribution is licensing and marketing films. So this is putting the movie out into different media outlets, theaters, TV broadcasters, video and DVD distributors, airlines, pay-per-view, and all the marketing that goes along with it to advertise and publicize the movie so that audiences know they can go buy it. The exhibition sector is really primarily concerned with, the point of purchase, right? It takes place at the retail level where viewers can pay to see a movie, like in the theaters, or on a pay cable TV station. They can buy or rent the DVD. They can purchase it on Apple and stream it or download it, online. And at the other formats like free TV, basic cable, this is still your quote unquote purchasing the film by watching advertising, right? So it's free to the viewer, but you're watching it is supported by advertising dollars. And the last slide is about the new media players and their impact. So we mentioned the studios. They're really being threatened right now by these big streaming giants, and that's Netflix and Amazon and YouTube and Apple, but also includes, telecommunications companies like AT&T and Verizon. So these new formats, which is really, streaming and downloading, these companies are creating huge competition. It's been very tricky for the studios. And the protocol, Internet Protocol Television, that's the technology which made this streaming, possible, is sometimes referred to as OTT, or over the top, and really just refers to streaming movies without a cable box, right? There's no, box, so it's over the set top box, without a box rather. And chances are good you've heard of Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, Apple, and also Hulu, I guess would be mentioned. And the technology of digital streaming and downloads has really caught on and is just growing. And this means that people have more options, and consumers love that. We always want more options. We always want more control over our content, when we can see it, where we can see it. And certainly mobile viewing is one of the fastest parts of that. And people are watching, things on their phone, including entire movies. And then you have companies, telecommunications companies like AT&T and Verizon, getting into the content business as well. It's one of the reasons AT&T bought Time Warner. They want, access to those eyeballs. And they're making content as well. So I wanted to mention some of the large formats, right, offer some additional revenue. 3D and IMAX help round out, revenue to a film. And we're not seeing a lot of revenue coming from this yet, but it's the promise of it. And those are some of the new formats like virtual reality and augmented reality. And these new technologies will change the kinds of movies that get made at some point. We're not seeing it yet, but we certainly will. So thanks. Take a look at Chapter 2 and let me know if you have any questions.